Okay, the first step, and this is the first step for other kinds of equations too, like when equations, we isolated the absolute value first, and then we did something else, right? And we'll have other kinds of equations that's the first thing you do is you isolate. Same thing here, isolate the radical, meaning make sure it's the only thing on one side of the equal sign before you move on to the next step, right? By undo the radical, right, undo, what I mean is, it's not always the same thing. Like if the radical is a square root, then we're going to undo it by squaring both sides. If the radical is a cube root, then we're going to undo it by cubing both sides, right? There's many different kinds of radicals that we will have to undo. So I'm not trying to be specific. I'm just saying, once it's isolated, undo it, whatever it takes. Right? When you're done with that, then you solve the equation that's left. And that can be, we're going to see in what we do right now, we're going to see three kinds of equations at that step. Linear, meaning x is to the first power, and you can isolate it by just doing operations to both sides. Quadratic, which means you're probably going to have to factor it and solve that way. And absolute value, which means you got to remember, how did we solve absolute value equations? Okay, and then check our answers. So those are the basic steps. So this is our first example. First step would be isolate. What do I have to do to isolate this radical? Subtract 2, right? The radical is not alone on the left-hand side. So if I subtract 2, now I've got 3x minus 2 equals 4. Right? That was the isolate part. Okay, now second step would say undo. In this case, what will it mean to say undo? Square both sides, right? Well, what happens when you square a square root? Right, they cancel each other out. They're actually, technically, they are inverses, right? So this is 3x minus 2, right? The square root and squaring cancel each other. Right, and then on the right-hand side, 4 squared is 16. So what you're left with is a linear. That's a pretty basic algebra 1 kind of thing. Solve for x. Add 2. 3x equals 18. X equals 6. And then you can check it. Go up here and substitute in the 6. 3 times 6, 18. 18 minus 2, 16. The square root is 16, 4. 2 plus 4, 6. So it checks.